Welcome back to Pro Life Without Borders with Sarah and Mikayla. We just knocked
And the clap.
gonorrhea over again.
Ah,
If you're not watching us on YouTube,
You're
you
missing
are
out.
missing out. First of all, we do our lipstick for this.
Yeah.
Mikayla has glittery eyelids.
Yeah. To be fair, that wasn't really related to podcast filming. It's just, like some days you're just like, you're not feeling it. Like you wake up and you're like, I would rather just lay in bed and eat French fries.
Yes, but I don't think I've ever reacted to that feeling with glitter eyelids.
Oh, that's always how I react. Is I'm like, okay, like I'm struggling to like get a move on with my day. I'm just gonna put some glitter on and we're gonna do it. And so
I think what the thing is, there is no way I could possibly stay in bed.
Well, you have
Do you know what I mean?
400,000 children.
Yeah.
So like I don't.
Justin has moved back in with us.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So Jeremiah's coming home finally after 2 years. Hopefully.
Yeah, I was like, whoa.
I'm not even announcing the date at this point because
it's
probably
just
not going to
been a lot.
happen. And I'm so upset whenever it doesn't happen, and then I have to tell everyone else I told, and then it's just like this colossal upset group of people. So I'm just gonna like post a picture on Facebook when he comes home. I don't know. Anyway, so Jeremiah has to have his own room.
Okay.
We have a 4-bedroom.
That's high maintenance of him, but whatever.
Well, he has a nurse and he has like his vent.
Well, he's used to having his own room.
He's very special. He basically has a studio apartment right now, down in the city. So it's like a city apartment. So we have a 4-bedroom house, except so the teenagers are in the basement.
Right.
And Jonah, the 9-year-old, is never going to sleep in the basement. So
okay. Yeah.
He has to be upstairs, and Zeke shares with Jonah. So we have those two in a room, and then we have the teenagers in the basement, and then Jeremiah has a room, and obviously we have a room. And so our original plan was to because Zeke and Jonah are right next door to us, and like in the hallway, not like a separate building. And they have their bunk bed, like the lower bunk is like on the floor, so it would work really well as like a toddler bed. We could put like a railing up and then it would be like a toddler bed.
Okay.
And so my plan was to put Jonathan in there, but Jonathan still does not sleep through the night.
Earthquake. Okay. That's
He's 2.
A choice.
Yes. And so they revolted when we were like, hey, we're going to put Jonathan in your room.
I revolt too. I'd be like, no.
Which I respect that.
Yeah. Like I want to sleep, and kids don't adapt to like their disruptive sleep patterns more as adults can.
Yes.
Yeah.
So he's really close. So I think it'll just be for a couple months, and then they'll be okay, because they don't mind, like philosophically, they don't mind him sharing a room with them.
But they mind him waking up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, and just being like, hey, let's hang out. But the problem is now he sees me. So like I can hear him talking in his crib in my room, and like I just open my eyes and he's like staring at me. Because he's like, hello, mother. I see your eyes are open. Yeah. Wouldn't you like to take me downstairs and fix me some breakfast now? And I can't just lay in bed and pretend that I don't hear him like talking to himself and looking out. Like I can hear him looking out the window because he talks about everything outside.
Okay.
And, I can't pretend that I don't hear that because he sees me. So I can I can play dead for a little bit,
but not forever.
Not forever.
Yeah. That's too bad.
Yeah. There's really like laying in bed all day is just not an option for me.
Yeah, I could, but I can't because I have a job, and people would be like, where are you? So I just put on some glitter eyeshadow and got a coffee, and here we are.
You're doing great.
And and we're doing it, and I feel better now that I'm at work. But this morning I was like, I'm going to have to put glitter on or else I'm not going to make it.
Well, it worked out.
It did.
And we're glad to have you here. So we are going to talk about a pretty controversial topic.
Those are my favorite.
Me too. We run a pregnancy center and we started a pro-life podcast, so we clearly do not shy away from controversy.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about surrogacy.
Yeah. And so this came up because I was doing what people my age do, which is lay in bed and scrolling on my phone.
This is before the glitter eyeshadow.
No, but I was like scrolling along, minding my business, and I got an ad for surrogacy. In fact, I do have my phone here. And so I'm just going to pull up the ad so that we have I don't want to mess up the phrasing or anything.
I used to get these ads all the time, but no one wants my uterus anymore now that I'm 37. Now I just get ads for Botox. I don't
That's
even
too
need
bad.
Botox. Look at this skin.
I'm not gonna lie, I actually felt in some way like a little bit validated when I saw, because I understand surrogacy and the whole money making thing behind it. And so I understand that they're looking for like a very specific type of person to market this to. But I also have a significant birthday this year that I'm like feeling depressed about. And so this, like, I just felt very validated that I was like, I might have this significant birthday that I'll be spending with my cat. But at least I'm still young enough to get surrogacy ads on Facebook. And it really put a pep in my step. So it's private label surrogacy, and they are seeking a candidate with no more than 5 pregnancies.
That's you.
That's me. Single embryo transfer. No current history of emotional disorders or medications related to. We're just going to move right past that one. History of at least 1 full-term healthy pregnancy. Don't have that. If on government assistance, willing to come off and financially able to do so.
I thought that was weird.
That was weird to me because I was like,
because honestly, most of these ads are targeting women who are very low income.
Right.
And so women are seeking a way to take care of themselves and their children without having to go to work.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's essentially, if you're a surrogate and all of your like medical bills are being taken care of and you're getting like an allowance and then you get this kind of like lump sum at the end, the idea, a lot of women are looking into it as a way to stay home with their kids.
Right.
And so I thought that was odd.
Yeah. Well, and if you're financially able to come off of government assistance,
why would you be on it?
But again, like, I understand how corrupt that system can be. So I was like, I guess that makes sense. But and this is obviously the kicker. They misspelled willing. So there's something, and there's only one out there. Wiling. To terminate if there is a medical reason for surrogate or baby. Criteria is based on industry standards.
And that has been a problem in the news multiple times of surrogates who signed a contract saying they were willing to have an abortion and then changed their mind.
Yeah.
So backing up a little bit, surrogacy happens in a couple different ways. There is what is affectionately known as the turkey baster method.
Okay. Yeah.
Where often a relative of the mom, the intended mom, like a sister or a cousin, will do an at-home insemination with her husband's sperm.
Okay.
Super problematic, because now you have this baby who is half your husband's and half someone else's. Maybe it's your sister, maybe it's your cousin, maybe it's your best friend, but it's not your biological child.
Right.
And so you're counting on this person carrying this baby to term, delivering this baby, and then basically placing them for adoption with you.
Yeah.
But they're forever going to have that genetic link.
Yeah.
To the biological mother, who is essentially who it is. And now also your husband has this connection to this person he's not married to.
Right. But like related to, maybe, like,
and
there's just way too much drama. Like,
yes. It's very popular with people who really can't afford surrogacy.
Like the traditional
like the
way.
more like formal way.
Yeah.
Also can be kind of popular with like sort of homosexual couples. So the idea is sometimes like the gay man inseminates the lesbian woman, and if it's a boy, the gay man keeps them, the gay couple keeps it, and if it's a girl, the lesbian couple keeps it, or some other decision like that, which is just very problematic on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
So we're essentially saying like, okay, we want a child so badly that we're willing to have a child that's got like this biological parent over here that maybe they're not going to have a relationship with, and maybe we're going to place them with someone else, maybe we're not, and there's a lot of problems there. More typically, you have an embryo who is either the father's sperm, mother's egg, donor sperm, or some combination, and then you hire a surrogate or contract with a surrogate. And then that person carries your baby for you to term, and then that baby is then released to what are called the intended parents. So you have a birth mother, and then you have the intended parents. This is just fraught with potential problems, pitfalls. I would say that even in a perfect scenario, if there is such a thing, surrogacy is not it.
No, I mean, where do you even begin? Yeah, so there's the moral iffiness of some of the more non-traditional surrogacy ways, we'll put it that way. And then I think there's also some of the same concerns. We've done an episode about IVF before.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the same concerns that we have about IVF would apply to surrogacy in this manner, just because you're harvesting eggs, you're doing inseminations. Chances are most likely there's more than one embryo involved.
Right.
So all of the same concerns of IVF typically apply to surrogacy as well.
Except they're amplified.
Because now you have this third person who, on paper, is being treated basically just like a storage unit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like rent a womb.
Well, they call them a gestational carrier. Like, can you get any colder than that?
Yeah, I was like, you're just the U-Haul of... I don't know.
Yeah, and it typically is preying on women who are low income.
Yes, and that's the thing. Because, I mean, they offer... This specific ad, I don't think said how much they were willing to pay, but I know, like, I've seen... This is not the first ad that I've gotten for surrogacy. It's usually somewhere around 30 grand that they're offering. That's
a chunk of change.
That's a chunk of change. That's a full-time salary for a lot of people.
Yep. Yeah, if you're talking minimum wage.
Yeah.
And you can stay home with your kids. Some women...
Your medical benefits are taken care of, and a lot of times they're providing like a living stipend, or if you're a single woman, a lot of times they'll even pay for housing. Like, so if you think about it, you can make off pretty well.
Yes. So first of all, what it really comes down to for me is it's the commodification of parenthood and child.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at adoption, theoretically, you're looking at it as, how can I best serve this child?
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how you should be looking at it. Whether you're looking at doing an embryo adoption, an infant adoption, foster to adopt, international, whatever. It shouldn't be, what do I want? It should be, what's best for this child.
Mm-hmm.
And when we are talking about surrogacy, it's often all about the intended parent's desire.
Yeah.
Do we want a child with disabilities? No. So we're going to write into the contract that the surrogate has to have an abortion. We want a child with these physical features. Maybe if we're talking about like donor egg and donor sperm, we want this level of IQ point. We want this kind of physical characteristic. We want, the biological mom needs to be a doctor, and the biological dad needs to be a lawyer, and they need to be over 6 feet tall and blonde and blue eyes. And you might think, oh no, people don't do that. They absolutely do. Absolutely do. And when we adopted our embryos, people didn't want them because they were considered abnormal, and because there was some I considered to be very mild family health history.
Mm-hmm.
But it was enough to really have people saying, no, that's not perfect enough. That's not what we want. And so then you're bringing this third party in, who maybe she's low income. Maybe she's excited about helping a family to have a baby. Maybe she just wants the money because she wants to take care of her other children, whatever her situation is. But she's not planning on bringing this child home and caring for them. And so there's this, the baby is bonding with the mother, the carrier, I guess, just like they're supposed to, right? Like, the baby doesn't know. Like, nobody sent them a little message and said, hey, you're not going to get to go home with this woman. So the food that she eats, the sound of her voice, the sound of her family's voice, that's what that baby is bonding with. And they're going to be pulled away from that immediately.
Yeah.
And you might be thinking, oh, well, adoption does that too. Okay. In an adoption situation, a baby has already been conceived, and we're trying to find a good solution. Maybe the mom isn't ready to be a mom. Maybe there's addiction issues. Maybe the mom was a victim of violence and she doesn't want to care for that child. And so now we're trying to find the best possible solution in a bad situation.
Mm-hmm.
With surrogacy, gestational carriers, whatever you want to call them, we're placing a child in a woman's uterus knowing that we're going to separate them in 9 months.
Yeah.
And that's the only person this child's ever known.
Yeah, it just the whole. So I actually pulled up the website of like the specific company.
Also, private label surrogacy is the weirdest name I've ever heard. We should call ourselves the Private Label Pregnancy Center.
Yeah, we should.
We won't.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on this website. They do have a special section of the website for LGBTQ couples, and I would say that surrogacy definitely is geared towards that.
Towards homosexual men. Yes.
Yeah, towards homosexual men specifically. And so, talking about like the difference of perspective, right? Like what's best for this child that already exists versus like their website says everyone deserves the right to have a family.
And that's actually not
That's
true.
not true. And I think
at least not in the way,
context that they're talking about it. I think every child should have a family.
Right.
I think every person does have a family, but they're basically saying everyone deserves the right to start a family.
Everyone deserves the right to have a baby meeting their specific characteristics.
Which is not true.
Not true.
One, I'm single. I don't have a family of my own. Obviously, I have like extended family and whatnot, but like I have no husband, I have no children, and I am not entitled to those things.
Right.
Like
well, and
maybe
it would be for you to say, "Oh, I want a baby." I'm hitting this significant birthday, and I said I wanted to have a baby, so I'm just going to go out and get pregnant. You're not thinking about the baby.
No, that's purely like to satisfy a desire that I have. And again, like I think these are healthy desires. I think human beings are designed to desire children, and to desire creating families. I think that's how God made us. And so I think all human beings have like this innate desire to do that in some way or another. But we've perverted it to the point where one, we've got two dudes trying to have a family. So like,
which is questionable.
Right. And then you've got people who aren't married who are wanting children. And again, I don't think that that's a wrong thing, but I think there's other things other than surrogacy to do that. I have single friends who have fostered and have done fantastic at it. Like you don't have to go out and do this weird surrogacy thing to.
Well, and really what it comes down to, and this is what I've noticed in even the embryo adoption forums sometimes, is this desire to have sort of this perfect infant.
Right.
Like they don't want to adopt an older child because they might have issues. They don't want to adopt an infant because they might have issues. They want to sort of control everything from day one. And I always try to walk into these conversations carefully because I have been able to conceive. Like I had no problems conceiving.
Sure.
And so people can get really mad at me. Well, you don't know how hard it is. You don't understand. Like it's not fair for you to say this. But like the reality is, it is okay to make a judgment call and say this is morally wrong.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest issues with surrogacy is these abortion clauses. And I believe that this is mentioned on their website.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. So they've got this very long list of requirements that's much more extensive on their website than the ad. So they're looking 21 to 43 years of age, U.S. citizens, you got to speak English, healthy pregnancy, less than 2 or 3 C-sections, overall pregnancies were healthy, no history of recurrent miscarriages, BMI is under 33, can't be fat, can't have people having children. That would be terrible.
I think it comes down to like the statistically having a healthier pregnancy.
An interesting one that I suspect I know why it's in here. You have completed your own family.
Because they don't want you to change your mind and try to keep the baby.
That, or, yeah, I would say that's probably part of it. And in the event that a termination needed to take place, you and I both know that infertility is very common after abortion.
A side effect of abortion.
Yeah. So interesting. You have to have completed your own family. You can't be a smoker, no history of alcohol abuse, stable support system, not on antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds. You are open to terminating an unhealthy pregnancy for you, and if the baby is also affected by abnormalities. This would be a discussion, and second opinions are encouraged.
So this is where the my body, my choice mantra really breaks down. If the surrogate, the gestational carrier, is pregnant and does not desire an abortion, they can try to force her to have an abortion using the surrogacy contract and the desires of the intended parents. So at this point, it's not about what the biological. No, because she's not. See, this is where it gets weird, right? She's not the biological mother, but she's the carrier, and she's not the intended. Like when we adopted the embryos, I wasn't their biological mom, but I was their mom.
Yeah, like you were the gestational carrier.
I wasn't the
and the intended parent.
Yeah,
like you were both of those things.
So I was their mother, even though biology would say I was not.
Yeah.
But in this case, we have this mother who's not their biological mother most of the time, at least not in this contract, and who is not their intended parent either. And so maybe she doesn't want to have an abortion. Maybe she feels bonded with the baby. Maybe she feels that abortion is morally wrong. But can they force her to have an abortion through this contract? And I would say a lot of women are at least pressured into it.
Sorry, I was looking at the compensation.
Oh, yeah. How much can your uterus make? Well, you can't because you haven't had a baby yet.
Base pay of $55,000 plus benefits for a first-time surrogate. Base pay up to $65,000 for repeat surrogates. Monthly stipend of $300. Medication start fee, $500.
Holy moly.
Embryo transfer fee, $1,000. Multiples fee, if you have twins, it's an extra $5,000. If you have triplets or higher, it's an extra $10,000.
But they said they were only transferring one embryo. How do you get triplets?
Right.
That's
interesting.
Question.
Maternity clothes up to $750 for a single baby, $1,000 for multiples. Breast milk pumping, $200 a week. Housekeeping stipend at 32 weeks, $90 a week. So once you're super pregnant, they'll pay for someone to come clean your house. $90 a week. Travel reimbursement for meals, hotels, airfare, and more. Health insurance, mental health insurance. They provide surrogate support, and surrogates are also able to request additional compensation.
Wow. That is quite the price tag.
We're talking, if you added all of that up, depending on the whole multiples thing, I mean, you're looking at potentially 6 figures.
Oh, yeah. Now, so then as the intended parent, you have now become a purchaser of a commodity.
Yeah.
Right? It's sinking incredible amounts of money because you're also paying the agency, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not just paying.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out like how
I wish there like a cost package?
Yeah, I'm trying to, let's see, matching with parents, matching like-minded intended parents and gestational surrogates is critical. They send your profile to potential parents that fit your wish list. We will never ask you to compromise on your requests. Video introductions, blah, blah, blah. Medical evaluations. Oh, here they actually use the term IVF. IVF prep and transfer.
Yeah. So this is quite the price tag. So as the intended parents, whether they're LGBTQ, someone struggling with infertility, someone who simply doesn't want to go through pregnancy, because that can happen as well, especially with the mega wealthy.
Yeah.
They're purchasing a baby. And you can say that's not true, but it is. And when you're making a purchase, especially a big purchase, you want things to go your way. And pregnancy doesn't do that. One of the other big issues with surrogacy is so children are vulnerable. And the best advocate for a child is typically the mother and the father. I'm not trying to like belittle fathers, but typically it's the mother. The mother is the mama bear. She's the one that's going to go to the mat for her baby, for her child. She's the one that's going to advocate for them. She's the one that's going to protect them. Well, in a scenario where the biological parent is an egg donor and the surrogate is not genetically related to the child or planning on taking care of the child after they're born, and the intended parent has no biological relationship to the child and is not physically invested in pregnancy, who's advocating for the baby?
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of cases, the answer is kind of no one.
Yeah,
because the intended parents they're making their decision based on what they want. So what happens when the baby doesn't fulfill that wish list?
There's a whole section about international parents and talking about the fact that they work with intended parents from the US and many other countries where surrogacy is not permitted or very difficult to achieve medically or legally.
So you can hire your American surrogate to carry your baby if you're from a country where surrogacy is illegal?
They're talking about working with assisted reproductive technology attorneys. Now we're also encouraging people to break their country's laws.
How are they bringing this baby home?
Does this sound super familiar to anyone else?
I feel like we just talked about
I feel like we just talked about something about the United States going into other countries and just being.
What happens? So let's say, and I don't know what country you might have. I'm guessing most of the Middle East.
Yeah, I was I don't know. It just says we assist our intended parents with all details related to travel abroad for visits and delivery in the U.S.
So you have...
So you're going to other countries. So they won't adopt a baby out, for lack of a better term, to an international parent, but they will have international surrogates. So the intended parents are from the US.
Oh, I see.
But like they're getting these surrogates from other countries where it's illegal to be a surrogate. And they're like, don't worry, we have attorneys and people who assist you with parentage paperwork, visas, passports for your baby.
Oh my goodness, that sounds so complicated. And what happens when all this takes more than a few weeks to arrange? Like, where does the baby go? I mean, because the surrogate doesn't want the baby. That wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
So, and then what happens, and this has happened too, and I've seen this in the news, not super frequently, but frequently enough. What happens when the intended parents break up or change their mind and they don't want the baby anymore? Where does the baby go?
Right.
Or I also saw this when I was researching for the Bible study. So this is a while ago, that there's villages, especially in Asia, so like Laos, Cambodia, where women become surrogates because that's the only way they have to feed themselves and their families.
That's what I was like. You can make $100,000 to an international, you know, as I'm thinking of like the countries that we serve on the chat line. I mean, that's a life-changing amount of money.
Right. And so then there's actually stories of these villages, especially in Cambodia and Laos, where they're full of white babies.
Yeah.
Because the family never came to get the baby. And the gestational carrier, the surrogate or whatever, had the baby, and that was it. And the contract never was fulfilled. The intended parents never showed up. Maybe there were no intended parents. So what happens to the baby then? Because you've got this impoverished Asian woman who was doing this to try to have, you know, a life for herself and her babies. And so she was, you know, lured into this because she wanted the money. She needed the money. And the surrogacy company maybe went belly up, or the parents changed their mind. Yeah. And then what happens? And so I know a lot of you are thinking, oh, no, like, obviously that's wrong. But like, what if we did it the right way? What if it's an American family, the dad's sperm, mom's egg? Maybe they have a family member being the carrier. Maybe they hired someone and everything's super above board.
To hire a surrogate, by the way, total surrogacy costs typically range from $150,000 to $200,000.
That's a very large price tag. So is it okay then? Like, can we go through enough hoops to make surrogacy okay? And I'm going to say you can't.
There's just so much involved that even if you say, because I know that like with IVF, part of the problem is you've got these multiple embryos and they're being frozen and discarded, and you've got this whole eugenics thing going on, which surrogacy also has. Like they're talking, their website is full of stuff about like ideal candidates and good matches and healthy like.
It's just not about the baby.
It's not about
the baby any more than how do we get the healthiest baby that matches to our intended parents' desires as closely as possible,
with the least amount of problems.
Right.
Like these people are talking about, you know, even right down to like no history of emotional problems or blah blah. Like that's eugenics. This is what that is.
Well, what happens, and this has been in the news, what happens when a baby has Down syndrome or another chromosomal abnormality? They're contractually obligated to have an abortion.
Yeah, and I can't find, like, they have this website very locked down. There's no sample contracts or anything. It's just contact us. So maybe I might, I know, I was like, I think I might be whipping out my undercover information just to see. I just want to see, like, what is the contract? And it sounds like there's some flexibility about working with surrogate parents and what, but like, you have to be willing. That's part of the agreement, is you have to be willing for you or the baby. So it's not just a medical issue with you. Let's say you've got, and you and I both know that abortion doesn't solve any of the medical issues.
Right.
But they very specifically mention if there's a medical issue with the baby. So it's got to be in there somewhere. I just want to know.
And I'm sure that medical issue can really vary depending on the intended parent.
Sure.
Like, what if the baby is missing 3 fingers?
Yeah.
You know, what if the baby has a cleft palate?
Yeah, how are we defining medical issue?
We could, and I'm sure there are intended parents who want a perfect baby to the point where they're just like, try again, because they don't have the emotional connection. Not really.
Yeah.
Not
I
like
was
a
like,
not like a
they're
pregnant
out
mother does.
money, which I think when you're working with surrogacy, money is not really an object. Um, yeah, it's just a budget line item
Yeah.
to
And so
them.
the thing is, God intended for children to be conceived and born in a certain way.
Yeah.
And when we step outside that pattern, it causes problems. And that could be anything. That could be one night stands. That could be parents who are living together and not married. Even adoption. Okay, adoption is beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I
Mm-hmm.
love adoption. I want to adopt. I have adopted. But it comes with a certain emotional toll because
Mm-hmm.
it's not in God's plan, right? Like
Yeah.
God's plan is for two parents to have a baby and raise that baby in the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And when we step outside of that, there's a price to pay.
Yeah. And I just like, again, we reiterate, neither of us have infertility problems
As far as we know.
as far as we know. I don't know. I'm not married, so I just
Yeah, it's not really
it's
an
not,
issue.
yeah, I was like, it's not a concern at the moment. And so we don't know, the struggle with that, but we could still speak to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're not trying to downplay the hurt that people who struggle with infertility go through. Like that's not the point, but we can say objectively that things are wrong.
And I know that there have been women who have they've started down a road, or families, I should say, they've started down a road, and surrogacy seems like the best of a bad option. So maybe you started with IVF, you didn't realize there would be extra embryos, you didn't realize that this was going to happen. You have a child, and you, for whatever reason, can't get pregnant again. Maybe you had a partial hysterectomy. Maybe your pregnancy was too dangerous or difficult and that could happen again. I don't know. And you're like, well, I have these extra embryos. What do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
That's something you're going to have to really pray about and talk to the Lord about, talk to your spiritual counsel about. How do I deal with, okay, I've already started IVF. I have embryos in storage. I can't carry them, but maybe my sister is willing to, or my best friend or my cousin, or maybe we are willing to hire someone. That's something you're going to have to really, really wrestle with, because I don't have an easy answer for that.
Yeah, that's the thing is there we recognize the difficulty in some of these situations.
Yeah.
But some of these situations are not that difficult.
Right.
And we just don't purchase babies online.
Right. And if you are unable to have children, or your wife is unable to have children, I know that's hard. I don't know it personally, but I know that it's hard. And I know that, like, the Bible speaks multiple times of women who are barren, women who are unable to conceive, and just the heartbroken. They're just crying out to God, whether it's Hannah
Mm-hmm.
or Elizabeth or Rachel or whoever. And we know that that's a very fundamental heartbreak for a lot of women. But it's so important that even when life doesn't turn out the way that we want it to, and that could be with fertility or it could be something else,
Mm-hmm.
that we honor God with our choices. Just like if you want to get married and you don't get married, like, the right choice is not to go out and get pregnant by some guy
Mm-hmm.
just so you can have a family. There's a lot of ways that can be applied, and living out God's plan for our life and walking in His way is important, whether the issue is fertility or something totally, totally different.
Yeah. So it's just, and we can't even get into all of the legal issues that surrogacy comes with. I mean, it's all in the news. I know in the past couple of weeks, there's been a lot of talk about a woman who had the wrong embryo implanted.
Yeah.
And so she ended up with a baby who was of a different race than her and her husband.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused a whole bunch of issues, and it was traced back to this fertility clinic.
Yep, they swapped the embryos.
There's all sorts
and it was very obvious in her case because the baby was a different race.
Right. Yeah,
like,
that's the
what
thing.
If the baby wasn't?
Yeah, like how would you know?
You wouldn't know.
I mean, I guess you could do like DNA testing. Like, I have no idea how.
Well, I even thought about it because I read that story, and I think they ended up having to return the baby to, like, the biological family.
Yeah, and she parented it for like 4 months, and then, like, once everything was like, yes, this is what happened, like, legally was settled, like, they returned it, like, returned to sender.
Yeah, it was really rough, and so that baby's now separated from his mom.
Right, and, like, it's just awful.
The whole thing was really awful.
Yeah, the whole and I mean, I feel for them, I really do, because
I can't even imagine.
No, like,
I mean, you go through 9 months, and then you have this baby, and it's very obviously not your baby.
Well, yeah, like, think of all the problems that could cause in a marriage, and then you've got, like, this legal battle, and you're caring for an infant that isn't technically yours, but you carried, and thought was yours and you love, and then like what happened to your baby? And just
I can't even imagine. But I also, when I was reading that story for the first time, I was looking at Jonathan, and honestly, like, obviously he's adopted, we know that. But if, let's say we didn't know, I don't think it would ever occur to me. Like, he looks enough like us. He and Jeremiah look enough like us that it wouldn't even occur to us if we were just like a typical IVF family and we were just transferring our own embryos and someone transferred the wrong ones and I had them, I would just be like, oh.
Well, genetics are like so crazy that, I mean, I have friends who, in fact, like I was just talking with someone about this over the weekend. There's a woman in my church who has a brother, and they don't look related. Like they are, they're brother and sister, but like they look so different that looking at them, you would never think that they're related, but they are.
Emily and I don't look at all alike.
That is not true in the slightest.
Really?
That is 100%. I think all of your sisters, you guys look almost identical. Like I could definitely tell that you're related, especially you and Emily. Like I could see it.
I'm gonna have to look at pictures.
And I feel like people can look at my sister and I and say like, not only are you related, but we can say who your mom is.
But we like with Jonathan, he looks like Jonah.
Yeah, Jonah, I would say for sure. I think part of it's the blonde.
I mean, we're all Western European.
Yeah, like, I was like, you're all just very pasty white people.
Yeah, we're all pasty white and pale. And so if you know, I'm sure there are families out there that have had these swaps happen.
You can't tell me that this is the first time.
And they just
and then there's this whole, and I'll have to like dig it up and send you stuff. There's like an entire movement, I guess, that happened on TikTok of like this woman who was the result of a surrogacy. Like her mom had a sperm donor or something like that. And like the crazy legal stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And it turns out this guy's fathered like hundreds of babies.
I've seen that.
And like they're all connecting, and it had something to do with like a medical problem that they all now have. Like crazy stuff comes out of this surrogacy stuff. I mean, it's wild, but also like $100,000 is $100,000. So I totally understand, like, especially women overseas, why that would be appealing to them, because you could have everything. Like, I don't even have health insurance. So to get health insurance and $300 a month for this and a house cleaner for that, and in addition to $65,000, like,
and when some women really enjoy being pregnant, and there's a certain appeal to, first of all, I can stay home with my kids, I can make money, and I can help another family, and that's how it's built.
Yeah, and this whole website is talking about like how these women are called to help people who are experiencing infertility or can't carry pregnancies or gay or whatever. Like the whole thing is framed as out of the goodness of my heart.
Right. And the thing is, I'm sure there are situations, and maybe some of you will get mad at us, where it worked out really well in your mind. Like you got paid, you got the help you needed, the contract went well, the baby was healthy, the intended parent showed up and took the baby like they were supposed to. Maybe you're even still in touch, but we still have to think about the baby.
Yeah.
And you've just separated that baby from everyone they know, every voice that's familiar, every taste that they're used to tasting from their mother, the food that their mother really eats. And what does that do to them?
Yeah. And it's unnecessary. It's not a solution to a sad situation like adoption is. Right. This is, you created that situation and have terrible solutions for it. Like the whole thing is truly, in every sense of the word, man-made.
Yes. Yeah. So if you are struggling with infertility, or you know someone who is, and maybe you have considered surrogacy, really, really dig deep dive, look into it, make 110% sure you don't have any problems with it. Because one of the things I've noticed is when people call me and they ask and they want to have like the pro-life answer for the fertility solution that they're seeking, they don't want to look too close because they know they're going to see problems. So don't delude yourself into thinking that this is a good option, that everything will be fine, that you just have to close your eyes and get through it and you're going to get what you want. That's not how this works.
No. And yeah, I mean, it's just, I feel like we should probably say that people who were born of surrogacy are people just like everyone else.
Oh, for sure.
Same thing with IVF. Like if you were a product of IVF, you're just as much human as everyone else.
100%.
Like
and that's part of why we're so passionate about it.
Right. It's because we're dealing with people here. Like we're not dealing with price tags. This is not a product that you purchase and return if it after your 90-day free trial. Like these are people. Mm-hmm. But I also recognize that people who struggle with infertility are willing to overlook some of the craziest stuff because they're just that heartbroken.
Yeah.
And we see this especially internationally, and we can't really get that much into it, but we have countries that have crazy, crazy practices that any person thinking in their right mind would recognize this is a scam, this is inappropriate, this is wrong, but they don't because they are so blinded by that heartache of infertility.
They want a baby.
They want a baby. And I think a woman's desire to have a child overrides any sense of logic. I mean, we're talking about like people being scammed into thinking they're pregnant and giving birth to babies that never existed.
Right. And then basically they're being given someone else's baby. And
Right.
they know it's not their baby.
They know. But they're so heartbroken that they are willing to overlook everything. And I think a lot of people, it's not a matter of education. It's just a matter of emotions. Truly have that ability. And American women are no exception to that.
Well, and I think if we look biblically, we see Sarah and Hagar.
Yeah.
Sarah wanted a baby. And Abraham was told he was going to be the father of nations. And Sarah was like, it's not happening. Let's help God out. And so she takes her Egyptian servant, slave.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know how many options Hagar really had, but
yeah,
at the moment that she had intercourse with Abraham, she gave up ever having a family, ever having a husband of her own.
Yeah.
And she has Ishmael, and a host of trouble follows. Next generation, right? They're doing it again. Or no, two generations.
Yeah.
So Isaac and Rebecca have Jacob and Esau. Jacob marries Leah, gets tricked into marrying Leah. Then marries Rachel.
Yeah.
Leah has children. Rachel gives him her servant. Leah gives him her servant. Then Rachel gets pregnant. Now he has a favorite. Joseph's getting tossed in a pit. I mean, nothing good comes from it.
No.
Nothing good comes from it. And if you're a person who has been conceived with through like IVF surrogacy. So no, I shouldn't say that. Something good comes from it. You came from it.
Yes.
And you are made in God's image.
Yeah.
And that's part of why this really matters, because we shouldn't be messing around with that.
No, I mean, like we are playing with things that we were never intended to be allowed to play with. And violating a lot of natural laws that I think are put in place for a reason.
Oh, for sure.
And I think it's really hard to sit as someone who, as far as I am aware, has no fertility issues. I'm fully aware that it's difficult to sit and say that sometimes God gives us hard providences. When that's not necessarily a hard providence that I have.
Right.
Technically, because I'm single. So like I don't have kids either. But
yeah.
Like I think it's hard to hear that sometimes. But sometimes that is how it is. And it's not for no reason.
Right. And I don't know the reason.
I wish I could give everyone the reason.
But God knows. And so we need to lean on him and trust in his will and trust in his providence. And we need to draw lines about the fertility intervention that we're willing to try.
Yeah.
And the things that are crossing the line.
Yeah. And I think definitely talk with your spouse and meet with your pastor if you have to. Pastors actually do have like a lot of insight about things like this. Like they might seem like they don't, but they do. Reach out to your pregnancy center and talk to them about it as well. There are fertility treatments that I think are 100% okay.
Oh, for sure.
Like this is not well, if you're infertile, too bad.
Yeah.
Like there are definitely things you could do. There's medicines to try. There's all sorts of things. Medical technology is amazing. But we do have to recognize where the line is. And I would say that IVF and surrogacy is past the line.
And I've had this conversation a zillion times. You are totally welcome to email podcast@promiseoflifenetwork.org. I'd love to chat with you. And I'm not going to judge you. Like I've had plenty of people that have talked to me and they've chosen something I wouldn't necessarily agree with. And that's their choice. But it can give you a chance to talk to someone who's sort of very separate from the situation and has done a lot of the reading and the research. And I'd be happy to do that with you.
Yeah. So
thanks for joining us on this podcast. A little bit of a heavier topic. Who knows what we'll talk about next week?
I have no idea. I guess and in the meantime, I'll just keep getting surrogacy ads until I'm 43, apparently.
Well, I'm 37 and I stopped getting them.
I was about to say, like, I'm surprised 43 seems late.
I would guess that if they're only doing it at 43, if you have had if you've successfully been a surrogate before, I can't imagine that they're like contracting with people at 43.
I was about to say, because anything past 35 these days is considered a geriatric pregnancy.
But a lot of it times it's related to the egg age too.
That's true. And so if you're using younger eggs, maybe your 43-year-old uterus is fine.
I don't know.
I don't really want to find out.
All right. Well, thanks. On that note, have a great day. It's Sarah and Mikayla with Pro Life Without Borders, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye.